Imagine walking into a luxury store, excited to buy something special, only to be met with looks of disdain. Has that ever happened to you? It's the kind of situation no one expects, but it happens more often than we realize. Appearances can be deceiving, and sometimes a single misjudgment can be costly. This story takes place in a prestigious car dealership, where an ordinary-looking customer walked in to browse the cars. He wasn't dressed in designer clothes, didn't flaunt an expensive watch, and seemed like just another window shopper. Little did the salesman know, that man was one of the most influential entrepreneurs in the world. On the other side of the showroom, a seasoned employee observed the scene. He had helped hundreds of customers before and had developed a dangerous skill, judging people at first sight. When he saw this man enter, his first thought was that he wasn't worth the time. With a quick glance, he concluded that this guy didn't have enough money to afford a car from this dealership. After all, truly important customers arrived in sharp suits and luxury cars, not in such a simple outfit. The salesman sighed, straightened his tie, and approached the customer with a forced smile. "Can I help you?" he asked, in an uninterested tone. The customer, visibly excited, replied that he wanted to see one of the dealership's most expensive models. The salesman, with a subtle hint of sarcasm, suggested that he might want to check out something more affordable. His tone was just polite enough to not be outright rude, but the message was clear. Don't waste your time dreaming too big. What he didn't realize was that he was about to learn a lesson he would never forget. What this salesman didn't know was that the customer standing before him was none other than Elon Musk, the billionaire founder of Tesla and one of the greatest visionaries of the century. Musk was there to evaluate the customer experience and see what could be improved in the automotive retail industry. Without knowing, that employee was giving him a masterclass in exactly how not to treat a customer. But the worst was yet to come, and this story was about to take an unexpected turn. Now, put yourself in the salesman's shoes. Have you ever made the mistake of underestimating someone based on their appearance? This story isn't just about Elon Musk. It's about a common behavior that happens every day in countless situations. And often, the most valuable opportunities are lost because we judge too quickly. But did the salesman realize his mistake in time? Was there any chance for redemption? Hold on to that thought, because the next events are even more surprising. Automo. Acquiesta o segundo capítulo com o titulo traduzido para angles. 2. The first encounter, prejudice and arrogance. The first interaction between a customer and a salesperson can determine everything. It can be the start of a great opportunity or the moment when a sale is lost forever. And that day, the dealership salesman was about to make a mistake that would change the course of this story. When the simply dressed man walked into the showroom, he wasn't greeted with enthusiasm. On the contrary, he was met with a quick, judgmental glance. The employee believed he could identify serious buyers just by their appearance, and in that instant, he labeled this customer as a waste of time. With an impatient sigh, the salesman approached. His body language spoke volumes. Slightly tilted shoulders, a blasé expression, and a half-smirk dripping with condescension. "Can I help you?" he asked, without any real interest. But the customer, oblivious to the subtle hostility, responded enthusiastically, saying he was interested in one of the dealership's most sophisticated models. The salesman's reaction was almost imperceptible to an untrained eye. A slight raise of his eyebrows and a quick glance up and down, as if trying to understand why this man would even ask such a question. "Oh, that's one of our most expensive models," the salesman replied, subtly emphasizing the word expensive, making it clear he didn't believe this man could afford it. To reinforce his assumption, he made an unexpected suggestion. "Maybe I could show you some more affordable options that would better fit your budget." In the salesman's mind, he was simply being realistic. But in reality, he was engaging in the kind of silent prejudice that shuts down opportunities before they even have a chance to unfold. The customer, still composed, insisted. He wanted to see that specific model. His tone was calm but firm. He knew exactly why he was there. Yet, the salesman, still skeptical, crossed his arms and adopted a defensive stance. "Look, this car isn't for just anyone. We get a lot of people coming in just to take pictures and dream a little. Are you sure you want to see this model?" he asked, suppressing a chuckle. To him, this was almost amusing. He had seen this scenario before. Someone pretending to be a millionaire when they clearly weren't. What the salesman didn't realize was that he wasn't just dealing with someone who could afford that car. He was dealing with the man who owned the company revolutionizing the automotive industry. Every word he spoke only made things worse, and with every second that passed, he was pushing himself further away from what could have been a life-changing opportunity. But he would only realize this too late. The tension in the showroom was growing. The salesman, still convinced that the customer in front of him was just another dreamer, continued his passive-aggressive approach. But the situation was about to escalate in a way that neither of them expected. With unwavering confidence, the customer pointed at the luxury car he wanted. "I'd like to test drive this one," he said, his voice calm but firm. The salesman chuckled softly, as if amused by the request. He shook his head and responded, "Sir, we don't allow test drives for just anyone. This model is reserved for serious buyers." The words stung like an insult, but the customer remained composed. Instead of arguing, he asked a simple yet powerful question. "And what exactly makes someone a serious buyer?" The salesman smirked, crossing his arms. "Well, for starters, someone who can actually afford it," he replied. Then, as if wanting to put an end to what he considered a waste of time, he added, "Look, I don't mean to be rude, but this car is worth more than some people make in a lifetime. Maybe we should focus on something more within your range." His tone was patronizing, dismissive, and filled with the arrogance of someone who thought he had everything figured out. At that moment, the atmosphere in the dealership shifted. A few employees nearby had begun to notice the conversation, sensing that something unusual was happening. Some exchanged quick glances, while others subtly moved closer, drawn by the growing tension. The salesman, however, was completely unaware that he was walking straight into one of the biggest mistakes of his career. The customer, still keeping his composure, smiled slightly and pulled out his phone. "How much is the car?" he asked. The salesman sighed, clearly impatient, and gave him the full price, an astronomical number meant to discourage those who weren't truly wealthy. Without hesitation, the customer nodded. "All right, I'll buy it. Right now. Cash." A wave of silence washed over the showroom. For a brief moment, the salesman's confident demeanor cracked. He blinked in disbelief, processing what had just been said. "Excuse me," he stammered, his voice no longer carrying the same arrogance. The customer repeated, this time with even more clarity, "I'll buy it. No financing. No negotiations. Full price. Right now." The room seemed to freeze. Employees who had been eavesdropping suddenly found themselves holding their breath, waiting to see what would happen next. But instead of admitting his mistake, the salesman doubled down on his arrogance. With a scoff, he leaned against the counter and said, "Sir, I don't think you understand how this works. This isn't some cheap car you can just buy on impulse." He let out a dry laugh. "Maybe you should check with your bank before making such bold claims." It was at that moment that the customer decided it was time to reveal the truth. What happened next would not only shock the salesman, but completely change his fate. The humiliation he had just inflicted was about to come back to him in a way he never expected. The atmosphere in the dealership was charged with tension. The salesman, still convinced that the customer was bluffing, smirked with arrogance. In his mind, this was just another man pretending to have wealth, someone who would soon back down when asked for proof. But what happened next would leave the entire showroom in stunned silence. Without a hint of hesitation, the customer pulled up his banking app on his phone and turned the screen toward the salesman. The numbers displayed were staggering, more than enough to buy not just one, but an entire fleet of luxury cars. The salesman's smirk faded instantly. His face, once filled with confidence, now displayed a mix of disbelief and panic. He blinked rapidly, his mouth slightly open, but no words came out. For the first time, he truly looked at the man in front of him. The simple clothes, the unassuming attitude, the calm demeanor. It all suddenly made sense. This wasn't just anyone. This was Elon Musk, the billionaire, the CEO of Tesla, the man who had revolutionized the automotive industry. And he had just been humiliated in a dealership that, ironically, was supposed to be selling luxury cars to people exactly like him. A heavy silence fell over the showroom. Employees who had been eavesdropping moments ago were now frozen in place. Some exchanged wide-eyed glances, while others simply stared at the unfolding scene, unable to believe what they were witnessing. The salesman, who had spent the last few minutes talking down to his customer, suddenly felt a cold sweat forming on his forehead. Mr. Musk, I didn't realize," he stammered, his voice cracking. His mind was racing, trying to find a way to undo the damage, to erase the past few minutes as if they had never happened. But it was too late. Elon Musk, still composed, slipped his phone back into his pocket and let the silence stretch for a few agonizing seconds. Then, with a calm but firm tone, he asked, "Tell me, is this how you treat all your customers?" The salesman swallowed hard. He had no answer. He knew that whatever he said now wouldn't change the fact that he had just disrespected one of the most powerful men in the world. His arrogance had blinded him to an opportunity he would have otherwise celebrated. And now, he could only wait for the inevitable consequences. As the tension reached its peak, Musk took a deep breath and looked around the dealership. Every eye in the room was on him. What he said next would determine the fate of not just the salesman, but possibly the entire business. And that was something no one was prepared for. The weight of Elon Musk's words hung in the air like a storm cloud. The salesman, who just moments ago had been brimming with arrogance, now stood frozen, his face pale with realization. His heart pounded in his chest as the truth fully set in. He hadn't just been rude to an average customer. He had humiliated one of the most influential and powerful figures in the world. Musk's question still echoed in his mind. Is this how you treat all your customers? There was no way to undo what had been said, no way to erase the condescension, the judgment, the blatant disrespect. And now, the consequences of that mistake were about to unfold. A nervous energy spread through the showroom. Other employees, who had initially been amused by the interaction, now stood stiff, afraid of what might happen next. The dealership manager, who had been in his office just minutes before, rushed to the scene after hearing whispers of what had transpired. The moment he spotted Musk, his face twisted in horror. He pushed past his stunned employees and reached out a trembling hand. "Mr. Musk, I sincerely apologize for any misunderstanding," the manager stuttered, trying to salvage the situation. "This is not how we do business. I assure you, this does not reflect our values." His eyes darted toward the salesman, now visibly sweating, who stood awkwardly, unsure of whether to speak or stay silent. But Musk didn't respond immediately. He simply observed. The way everyone suddenly changed their demeanor. The way respect was only given once his identity was revealed. And that, more than anything, told him everything he needed to know about this dealership. Then, in his usual composed manner, Musk crossed his arms and spoke in a steady voice. "No need to apologize. You showed me exactly how your business operates." The manager swallowed hard. The words hit like a hammer. Musk wasn't just a wealthy customer. He was a man who built companies from the ground up. He understood leadership, culture, and business better than anyone. And now, he had seen firsthand the toxic mindset infecting this dealership. The salesman, desperate to fix his mistake, tried to force a smile. "Mr. Musk, I truly didn't recognize you. Had I known..." Musk raised a hand, silencing him. "And that's the problem," he said. "You only treat people with respect when you think they have money. That's the kind of attitude that kills businesses." A thick silence followed. The employees shifted uncomfortably. The manager looked like he wanted to sink into the floor. And the salesman? He had never felt so small in his life. What happened next would shake the dealership to its core. Musk took one last glance at the luxury car he had originally wanted to buy. But instead of moving forward with the purchase, he turned and walked toward the exit. And as he did, he uttered a final statement that sent shivers down everyone's spine. "I think I'll take my business elsewhere." The doors swung open, and just like that, he was gone. The impact of that sentence was devastating. The realization hit the manager like a freight train. They had just lost the biggest sale in the dealership's history, not just because of the money, but because of the reputation damage that would soon follow. In an era where stories spread like wildfire, it was only a matter of time before the world heard about what had happened here. And when it did, the consequences would be brutal. The moment Elon Musk walked out of the dealership, reality came crashing down on everyone inside. The salesman, who once carried himself with an air of superiority, now stood motionless, his face drained of color. The manager rubbed his temples, already anticipating the storm that was about to follow. Employees exchanged uneasy glances, knowing that what had just happened would not stay a secret for long. And they were right. By the next day, the story had spread like wildfire. Social media was ablaze with discussions about how one of the world's most brilliant entrepreneurs had been judged, underestimated, and humiliated by someone who assumed wealth had a specific look. News outlets picked up the story, business analysts weighed in, and the dealership's reputation took a severe hit. People who had once considered buying from them now questioned their ethics and customer treatment. But the biggest consequence? The salesman who had insulted Musk was fired, not as an act of redemption by the dealership, but because his mistake had cost them more than just a sale. It had cost them their credibility. No luxury brand can survive if their employees turn away potential customers based on assumptions. However, the real lesson in this story isn't just about business. It's about the way we treat people. How often do we judge someone by their appearance? How many times do we dismiss a person because they don't look successful, wealthy, or important? This situation with Musk is just one example of something that happens every day, in different places, with different people. Someone walks into a store dressed casually, and they're ignored. Another person speaks softly, and they're underestimated. A quiet individual in a meeting is overlooked, only for everyone to later discover they had the best ideas all along. Musk didn't need validation. He didn't need the dealership's approval. He already knew his worth. But how many people walk through life being treated unfairly simply because others fail to look beyond the surface? Respect should never be reserved only for those who look the part. A billionaire in jeans and a t-shirt deserves the same courtesy as a struggling student. A customer in flip-flops might just be a CEO. A job applicant with a simple resume might be the next genius in their field. You never truly know who you're speaking to or what they're capable of. And the most ironic part? If the salesman had treated Musk with kindness and professionalism from the start, he would have made the biggest sale of his career. He would have been celebrated, rewarded, and maybe even personally connected with one of the most visionary minds of our time. But because he let his arrogance and prejudices take control, he lost everything in a matter of minutes. At the end of the day, this story serves as a powerful reminder. Always treat people with respect, not because of what they have, but because of who they are. You never know who's sitting across from you. And more importantly, you never know who they might become.